The woman's fingers tightened around her phone as she spoke urgently to the 911 operator. I'm telling you, this black kid is causing trouble. Her voice rose with each word, conviction evident in her tone. The teenager in question stood nearby, unaware of the brewing storm. A black SUV screeched to a halt, drawing all eyes. The city's mayor emerged, her face masked with controlled fury. The accuser's mouth fell open in shock as recognition dawned. The mayor's voice cut through the tension, quiet but steely. That troublemaker you're reporting is my son. In that moment, the woman's certainty crumbled. She had made a grave mistake that would ripple far beyond this street corner. As we reflect on this real-life story, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Jeremiah leaned against an oak tree, enjoying the afternoon sun in Oakwood Park. He breathed in deeply, savoring the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. His mom had promised to pick him up soon, and he was content to wait, lost in his thoughts. A prickling sensation at the back of his neck pulled Jeremiah from his reverie. He opened his eyes, scanning the park until his gaze landed on a middle-aged white woman seated on a nearby bench. Sarah, as he would later learn, was staring at him with naked suspicion, her lips pressed into a thin line. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she rose from the bench, her movements stiff and purposeful. She approached Jeremiah, her face a mask of determination. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "This is a family park, not a place for troublemakers. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." The implication in her words stung Jeremiah. He felt a mix of confusion and anger rising within him. "Ma'am, I'm not causing any trouble," he insisted, struggling to keep his voice calm. "I'm just waiting for my mom. I have every right to be here." Sarah's face flushed with anger. She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone with trembling fingers. Jeremiah's eyes widened in disbelief. He stood up slowly, holding his hands out in a placating gesture. "Please, there's no need for that," he pleaded, fear creeping into his voice. "I'm telling you the truth. My mom will be here any minute." But Sarah had made up her mind. With a look of grim satisfaction, she dialed 911, her eyes never leaving Jeremiah's face. "Hello? Yes, I need to report a suspicious teenager in Oakwood Park," she said into the phone, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet afternoon air. Jeremiah stood rooted to the spot, a cold wave of dread washing over him. As Sarah continued to speak to the dispatcher, painting him as a threat, Jeremiah felt a profound sense of injustice settle in his chest. He was being criminalized for simply existing in a public space, his presence deemed suspicious solely because of the color of his skin. The reality of the situation hit him hard. In a matter of minutes, police would arrive, and Jeremiah knew all too well how quickly such encounters could turn dangerous for young black men like himself. He prayed his mother would arrive soon, even as he steeled himself for what was to come. As the screech of tires pierced the air, two police cruisers rolled to a stop, their lights painting the park in alternating flashes of red and blue. Jeremiah's heart pounded, a chill running down his spine as he watched the officers approach. He'd seen countless videos of similar encounters gone wrong, and now he found himself at the center of one. The officers walked toward them with measured steps, their eyes scanning the scene. Jeremiah stood perfectly still, his hands visible at his sides, remembering his mother's lessons on police interactions. "What's the problem here?" the taller officer asked, his gaze shifting between Jeremiah and Sarah. Sarah stepped forward, her words tumbled out. "This young man has been loitering for hours. He refused to leave when I asked. I'm concerned about the family's safety." Jeremiah felt a surge of frustration at Sarah's distorted version. He opened his mouth to speak, but the second officer cut him off. "We'll get to you in a moment, son," he said, his tone making it clear that Jeremiah's side was secondary. The officers questioned Sarah, nodding as she embellished her account. With each passing moment, Jeremiah could feel the situation slipping away from him. When they finally turned to him, their expressions were guarded. "All right, young man," the first officer said. "Explain yourself. What are you doing here?" Jeremiah took a deep breath. "I was just waiting for my mom to pick me up," he explained, fighting to keep his voice steady. I come here often. I wasn't bothering anyone. The officers exchanged a glance. Do you have any ID? The second officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. No, sir, Jeremiah replied, aware of how this would sound. I'm only 14. I don't have a driver's license. As the questioning continued, Jeremiah struggled to articulate his side. The officer's skeptical tone and rapid-fire questions left him feeling overwhelmed. He sensed the situation escalating, the officer's posture becoming more rigid. A small crowd had gathered, several onlookers recording with their phones. Jeremiah's anxiety grew, knowing this humiliating moment could end up on social media. Just as the situation seemed poised to worsen, the low rumble of an approaching vehicle caught everyone's attention. A sleek, black SUV pulled up to the park entrance. The officer's demeanor shifted instantly as the driver's door opened. Their eyes widened in recognition, and Jeremiah felt relief wash over him. He knew his mother had arrived. As Mayor Angela Thompson stepped out of the SUV, her presence commanding immediate attention, Jeremiah saw the officer straighten. Sarah's mouth fell open in shock, the realization of her mistake dawning on her face. The tension in the air crackled as everyone understood that this confrontation was about to take an unexpected turn. Mayor Angela Thompson emerged from the SUV, her presence immediately commanding attention. The park fell silent as she approached the gathering, her eyes fixed on her son. Jeremiah's shoulders sagged with relief, but the tension in his mother's jaw told him this was far from over. What's going on here? Mayor Thompson's voice cut through the silence, each word crisp and measured. The officers snapped to attention, their earlier confidence evaporating. Sarah's accusatory demeanor crumbled under the mayor's steely gaze. Mayor Thompson surveyed the scene, taking in the police cruisers, the crowd, and her son's rigid posture. I'd like an explanation. Why are my officers questioning my son in a public park? The taller officer cleared his throat, his authority replaced with hesitation. Ma'am, we received a call about a suspicious individual. Suspicious? Mayor Thompson interrupted, her eyebrow arching. What made my son suspicious? Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling. He was just hanging around for hours. You thought what exactly? Mayor Thompson's voice was quiet but sharp. That a black teenager in a public park must be up to no good? Sarah's face flushed, her certainty dissolving. The mayor turned back to the officers, her expression a mixture of disappointment and determination. Gentlemen, this situation highlights a critical issue. Did you consider the possibility of bias in the call? Did you approach my son with the same presumption of innocence you'd give any other citizen? The silence that followed was deafening. Mayor Thompson placed a protective hand on Jeremiah's shoulder, her voice softening. Are you all right, sweetheart? Jeremiah nodded, the knot in his chest finally loosening. I'm okay, Mom, he said, his voice steady despite the lingering fear. Mayor Thompson addressed the group, her expression resolute. This incident underscores the need for comprehensive anti-bias training in our police force and community. No child should feel criminalized for existing in public spaces. She fixed Sarah with a stern look. I hope this serves as a wake-up call. Your unfounded suspicions could have had serious consequences. We must all examine our biases and work to create a community where everyone feels safe and welcome. As the mayor's words sank in, the atmosphere in the park shifted. The officers, visibly chastened, stepped back from Jeremiah. Sarah mumbled an apology, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Mayor Thompson addressed the crowd. Let this be a lesson. We must do better, and it starts with each of us confronting our own biases and standing up against injustice. With that, she gently guided Jeremiah towards their SUV, leaving behind a park full of people with much to contemplate. As they walked away, Jeremiah felt a mix of relief and pride. His mother's intervention had not only protected him, but might have sparked the change their community needed. The incident in the park had concluded, but its impact reverberated through the community. Mayor Angela Thompson knew this moment could either deepen divisions or spark meaningful change. With Jeremiah at her side, she stepped forward to address the growing crowd. What we've witnessed today, she began, her voice carrying across the park, is a symptom of a pervasive problem in our society. Racial bias. The crowd fell silent, absorbing her words. Too often, we allow unfounded fears to dictate our actions, with devastating consequences for innocent people. Jeremiah, still visibly shaken, found the strength to speak. "I was just sitting here enjoying the day," he said, his voice gaining resolve. "In minutes, I went from feeling safe to feeling like a criminal. It's not right." The rawness of Jeremiah's words resonated with many in the crowd. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered onlookers, punctuated by nods of understanding. Sarah, the woman who had called the police, stepped forward. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she admitted, "I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to keep the park safe." Mayor Thompson's eyes narrowed. "The point is, ma'am, that it shouldn't matter whose son he is. Every person deserves to exist in public spaces without being criminalized." She turned back to the crowd. "This incident has made it clear that we need to do more. Today I'm announcing the implementation of comprehensive anti-bias training for our police force and city employees." The announcement elicited mixed reactions. Some nodded approvingly, while others exchanged skeptical glances. A man near the front called out, "How will this training actually change things?" Mayor Thompson acknowledged the question. "Anti-bias training isn't a magic solution, but it's a crucial first step in raising awareness and providing our public servants with tools to recognize and counteract their own biases." This incident will serve as a real-world example of how quickly assumptions can escalate into dangerous situations. As the crowd continued to debate, Mayor Thompson turned to Jeremiah. In a quiet moment, she pulled him into a gentle hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You handled this with more grace than anyone should have." Jeremiah leaned into his mother's embrace, a mix of exhaustion and relief washing over him. "Do you think things can change?" he asked softly. Mayor Thompson met her son's eyes. "Change is never easy," she said firmly, "but moments like these can be the spark that ignites real progress. We just have to be brave enough to keep the conversation going." As they made their way back to the SUV, leaving behind a park buzzing with intense discussions, it was clear that the day's events had struck a chord. The incident had forced the community to confront the reality of racial profiling head-on, and the conversations that followed would echo through City Hall, police precincts, and dinner tables across the city for weeks to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Oakwood Park, the impact of that fateful afternoon continued to resonate. Mayor Thompson's words echoed in the minds of those who had witnessed the confrontation, exposing the raw nerves of racial tension that still pulsed beneath the surface of their community. In the days that followed, conversations sparked across the city. People grappled with uncomfortable truths about their own biases, re-examining interactions they had once dismissed as harmless. The local newspaper explored the roots of racial profiling, while community leaders organized town halls to address the issue head-on. Jeremiah, still processing the weight of his experience, found an unexpected ally in his school's debate club. As he shared his story, his classmates listened with rapt attention, their eyes widening as they realized the gravity of what he had endured. It was a stark reminder that the fight against prejudice was far from over, even in their seemingly progressive town. Mayor Thompson pushed forward with plans for comprehensive anti-bias training, facing pushback but standing firm in her conviction. "We cannot afford to be complacent," she repeated in interviews and council meetings. "Every unjust interaction chips away at the foundation of trust our community is built upon." As weeks passed, small changes began to take root. Police officers engaged in more community outreach programs, fostering dialogue and understanding. Local businesses displayed signs of inclusivity, and a new mural bloomed in Oakwood Park, celebrating the city's diversity. Civil rights leader Keon Harold's words resonated deeply. "There are thousands of Black men sitting in prison who have been falsely accused. That's why we have to address incidents like this now." The incident in Oakwood Park had been a wake-up call, challenging us to examine our own biases and actively work towards creating a more just society. The path forward is not easy, but it is necessary. Our actions in the face of prejudice shape the world we live in, and silence is no longer an option. Join our community of people who believe in justice, empathy, and powerful storytelling. By subscribing, you're not just watching, you're part of a movement that values real stories and change. Add us to your daily routine and make every story count. Subscribe and join us each day for stories that make an impact.